Joe Difabio joins us to talk about hitting rock bottom. He talks about the myriad of reasons why we start down the road of addiction, the decisions that many end up making in order to feed it, and getting to the point where he voluntarily turned himself into jail. He talks about the emotional and communication skills learned in treatment and how they have translated into marriage and parenting. At Atlanta Detox and Amatus Recovery Center, they help individuals find the treatment that works for them, including therapy at all levels of care, including using technology like GeneSight to help determine which and whether medications can be useful. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery Podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery. Ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
The Illuminate Recovery Podcast is brought to you by Illuminate Billing Advocates. Make billing and collection simple with leader in substance abuse and mental health billing services. Verification and analysis of benefits, pre-authorizations, utilization management, accurate claim submission and management, denial and appeal management, and industry-leading reporting. Improve your practice's cash flow and your ability to help your clients with Illuminate Billing Advocates.
Joe Difabio is joining Kurt and I today on the podcast. Joe is the Director of Business Development at the Atlanta Detox Center and Atlanta Center for Mental Health. In his position, Joe meets many individuals who have hit bottom. He can relate to these clients and shares his own experience, strength, and hope. Joe has said, I try to assure them that whatever they are struggling with, alcohol, drugs, mental health, disorder, I know what that feels like. It feels like forever, and it seems so daunting right now. But a lot of people have recovered with us, and some even work with us now. We employ people who are recovering from substance abuse and mental health disorders. In fact, the majority of the staff at Atlanta Center for Mental Health and Atlanta Detox are in recovery from substance abuse disorder, something that Joe believes sets the treatment centers apart from the rest. Joe, I just wanted to give that little blurb because I thought that was pretty cool. Thanks for being on with us today.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you both very much for having me.
It's kind of exciting. I think, I feel like sometimes the people we talk to are celebrities because they've done so much in the industry, and I think you fall into that category. You've been out there, you're talking to so many people, and you're making a difference. And so I think, we celebrate the people on the screen that we watch on TV and movies a lot, but I think the people that are on the road, padding the pavement and really connecting with people and getting them help is really where the true heroes lie.
No, I appreciate it. And honestly, I think just working in this industry for the last few years, there are those individuals that I just look up to and I respect so much just because of the time that they've spent in and just how well connected they are and how knowledgeable they are. So I don't keep myself anywhere near like that echelon. I consider myself still very new and very green with just more to learn all the time. But I really do appreciate it. And, and the magic is it's at the beginning, right? I love being able to talk to someone in that moment of crisis and being able to talk to their family in that moment of crisis and just offer a solution, whether it's, something that I'm affiliated with directly or getting them connected with an appropriate resource. I love that. And then, if they're willing and God willing, 6 months later and they've gotten some peace and some serenity and some freedom in their life, it's the whole reason why we do this. That's the best. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. Well, it's a true story. There is nothing, I can't think of anything in my life that's felt better than making a difference in somebody else's life. right? And when our life feels like it sucks and it's horrible, you reach out to somebody else and can help them and make a difference for them. Everything feels better even when our problems don't go away.
That's it. I mean, that's the secret sauce. That's exactly what it is. How do we become maximum benefit to others, right? And it doesn't have to be in like a grand capacity. It could be as simple as, being a soundboard for someone, listening to someone. It could be as simple as just spending time with somebody. It doesn't have to be these, life-saving emergency moments. It's just being there and being of support, and when the time comes.
Yeah, so true. Love it. And it can be so simple. I love that you say that. Let's maybe start. Let's give people a little bit of an idea of who you are and where you come from. Maybe start a little bit back about how you ended up in this industry and what that journey was like.
Sure. So, my story is going to be very similar to hundreds of other people in recovery. I come from like a smaller, like very old school Italian household. My mother is, 100% Sicilian, so she is a tough cookie. But she is also like very warm and nurturing and loving, but get on her bad side and, she's going to deliver a right punch right to the face. My dad, on the other hand, has a lot of tendencies the way that I did. However, just, whether just didn't suffer consequences enough or was successful enough to where we didn't have to take a look at it. But my dad was very emotionally, verbally, and physically abusive to myself, my sister, and my mother. And to my mother's credit, I mean, she took the brunt of it, and she stayed in that marriage for 18 years, and that was way longer than she ever needed to. And so kind of growing up and not realizing that the dynamics of my household were not normal until I got a little bit older and I saw how, other fathers were with their children. It was strange for me to be at a friend's house and hearing, seeing their dad walk inside and not running upstairs to like the bedroom, because that's what it was like in my house. It was, as soon as you heard that garage door open, me and my sister, we would take off, just hide as quickly as we possibly could. And I had a lot of friends where that wasn't the dynamic in their house. And that was so strange to me. That was so strange. I didn't get it. But, looking back on it now and like working with some professionals and working with a sponsor, I've been able to understand like, that it's okay. And it is what it was. And, and now being a dad myself, I have that opportunity, that awareness and that experience to be, the type of father that my children deserve.
That's got to be tough. We tend to model the patterns that were there for us, right? Because that's what we know. And what you said is people don't, kids don't know that their home isn't the same as everybody else's. This is just what they know. It's their normal, and everybody must be like that until they start getting out and, getting older and seeing things outside. And I think this is true for all of us, regardless of the environment we grow up in, that if we want to be better parents, if we want to improve upon those skills, we have to do something different. And we really have to be intentional about it, or we fall back into those patterns that, and then I shake my head and go, oh man, I did it again. I haven't figured it out yet, right? What do you do to, kind of keep yourself going where you want to go and showing up how you want to show up?
This is going to sound really cliche, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time. But I do my best, and I struggle more times than I get it correct. But I try to utilize the same principles of the program of recovery when it comes to, my relationship with my wife, with my relationship with my children, like love, compassion, and tolerance. Like that's our code. And if I make a mistake, whether it's to my children or if I make a mistake to my wife, own up to it. I'll make amends for the mistake that I made. And then also, reaching out to other men in the same position. Like the first year was about like, how do I not get high anymore? But now, 6 years into it, it's not so much about the not getting high part. It's, how do I be a better young man, and how do I be a better father, and how do I be a better leader for my family and a better husband? And the same principles apply. reach out for help, call, talk to people, get advice, take the suggestions. That's exactly what I do.
Which is right. And then it's funny because it's not like there's some miraculous answer to it. Is that we're still going to be human, we're still going to make mistakes, and the distinction that I want to make is, I've known of relationships where someone has harmed someone else and they come back and they have flowers and they say I'm sorry, but then they repeat it over and over and over again, right? That's not the same thing of what we're talking about. We're talking about really making amends and then doing something to make sure we don't repeat those patterns. I didn't grow up in a home where I heard people say, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, right? That wasn't even acknowledged. And, you just had to have a tough exterior. And when I learned how to say sorry to somebody and be okay that, like, I'm not flawed when I've made a mistake, that's a big piece in recovery. And I imagine that is for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree as well. Being told sorry in my house growing up, like that didn't exist. Like if I'm going to take this whooping, even if I have no reason for it, and if I don't understand why I'm receiving it, it's because, I did something, I just don't know what it is, and I deserve it. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized, there's some stuff on my resentments list that I just did not deserve, right? And that's just how it goes. But, being able to utilize, the same thing, because I have two sons, and I just want to make sure that I can, be a leader for them, but also, my job is not to be their friend. My job is to raise them, but I can raise them with love and compassion and tolerance, while also, letting them know, like, there's things that are right and there's things that are wrong, and just to kind of teach them.
Yeah. It's a beautiful journey when we can get on the healing part of it and the change part of it, right? I love that. Yeah. So talk a little bit more, if I'm not mistaken, you were kind of doing struggling to graduate from high school because of drugs and, your affiliations. Talk about that journey a little bit and kind of where that took you and how it got you here.
Sure. So, we grew up with alcohol. Being an Italian household, it would not be strange for us to have, a glass of wine on dinner, like on Sunday dinner, being 7, 8, 9 years old. Like, that was not strange. It wasn't anything that I preferred. I didn't like the taste of it. I didn't feel that warm effect from it. It was just not something that I chased. And when I got into the 6th grade and obviously, started smoking cigarettes and we started smoking marijuana, that was like what really changed it for me. And I didn't realize that I was running from anything. I didn't realize that I was trying to cover anything up. But I remember the very first time that I felt the effects of marijuana. I mean, it changed my mind. It changed my total perspective on life. And I remember being 13 years old and saying, I'm going to have this every day for the rest of my life. I mean, immediately. And, going back into, 7th grade on Monday, it wasn't my buddies, they didn't feel the same way. I've got a big math test coming up, or I've got a social studies project coming up. And I'm thinking, how do we do that every day? I mean, from the very, very beginning. And, obviously that experience led me to have no reservations, no fear, no inhibitions. I was going to do everything that I could possibly get my hands on. And I went through everything that I could get. And I live in Alpharetta, Georgia, which is in, the suburb of Atlanta. And so there's tons of opportunity and there's tons of resources around to where you could pretty much find anything that you want if you wanted it bad enough and if you looked hard enough. And nobody wanted to escape reality more or worse than I did. And so, by the time high school came around, I mean, I was a senior in high school and I was already a full-blown needle junkie, buying heroin in Atlanta, skipping math class because it was before lunch, and making the trips down. And I really think, to my teacher's credit, they knew, he comes from, I don't want to say like a bad household, but he came from, like a difficult household. They knew the dynamics. I had been arrested 2 or 3 times already in my just being like a high school student. And I think my teachers really just kind of passed me based on sympathy. Just, he's a nice enough guy, like he'll figure it out. Let's just kind of nudge him along, and and like he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And unfortunately for me, was from that 17th, 18 year to about 25. Like I did nothing besides get arrested, sit in jails, go to homeless shelters, live homeless outside on the streets if it was warm enough out. And that was what my life consisted of for the next, I guess, like 7 years. Just, everything that you think about when you think of a homeless heroin addict, it's that dirty back alley, needle junkie drug. And that's exactly what my life consisted of. And addiction doesn't discriminate. I come from a good area. My mother, bless her heart, worked her ass off to provide for me and my sister. I mean, I had every opportunity that every other suburban white kid had. I just decided to go in a different direction and made that decision repeatedly.
So do you think that because you kind of smirk, not our listeners aren't going to be able to see your smirk, but you kind of smirk when talking about the way that your teachers reacted to this. If you could go back and either be the teacher, or when you look back at this and now knowing what you do about recovery, do you feel like that was a helpful reaction? Do you feel like it was enabling? Do you feel like what's the kind of response that now knowing what you know would be the right way to handle a high school kid like that?
Now knowing what I know and having experienced what I have, I mean, we would have hit pause, and there's a lot of signs and there's a lot of symptoms that something here is not right, and that it needs to, we need to take a look at it, and we need to figure out what it is that's going on. To my teachers' credit, this was 2007 and 2008, so the opiate epidemic in Atlanta hadn't really gotten the exposure that it has today, and it was just a different time. And people can say whatever they want or however that they felt, but drugs weren't as prevalent in this nice suburban area. It was very hush hush. I'm not going to let anyone know that my son is a heroin addict. I don't want anyone to know that we are having difficulties with mental health or substance use or whatever the case may be, because it's this facade, right? It's this facade, and everyone wants to protect their loved ones, and I totally understand that. But if it was me now, being able to recognize it, I think I just would have tried to communicate it with the individual, whether they take the suggestion or are going to pick up what I'm putting down or not. I'm at least going to give it a shot.
It's interesting to think about the timing of that, because like you're saying, this wasn't prescription drugs. This wasn't a pain thing, right? So you can't tie it to the sports programs or blame there. It's probably less likely that you're not nobody handed you this in the hallway. It was like, hey, try this. For you at that time, you had to actively go out and find heroin. This is a different story than the pain pill thing, right? The typical kind of white suburban version of drug addiction.
Sure. And I mean, that's definitely how it started for me, was the prescription painkillers. It wasn't because of, some traumatic injury. It wasn't because of, anything serious. It was just, I was that kid looking to escape, and I would try literally anything and everything. And OxyContin at that time was readily available, and then after a little bit of time, just the market for it, just the price, it just became egregious. And then you start looking at other ways to how do I run away from these withdrawals, and then you get introduced to heroin, which is a little bit cheaper, on a smaller scale, still readily available. And all you have to do is just be willing to take the trip down to Atlanta and, be a little street smart and not put yourself in a, overly dangerous position, and you'll get exactly what you're looking for every single time.
Interesting. And this is the I mean, this is the mind of someone that's an addict, right? That addiction is taking over. Is I can go to Atlanta, I can go to some really scary parts of town, but if I'm really careful, it's not too bad, and I won't lose my life, but I'll get what I want, right? It's
Yeah.
not just it like the drug takes over every time, and it really doesn't matter if it's dangerous. I'm gonna go get it because I need it. Mm. It.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not so much the fear of, I mean, at least for me, it wasn't the fear of losing my life. My fear was getting arrested. That was my fear. Because if I'm in jail, I'm going to have a very, very difficult time getting high and not getting dope sick. Like if I mean, later on after I graduated and I was just, homeless for a while, I accepted the fact that I was going to die a heroin addict and I was probably going to die before I was 25. I accepted it. I had no issue with it. I welcomed it. And then even at the very end, like that last month or two, I remember, hustling up enough money to secure and I remember just, getting ready to make my injection, and I'm trying to be as like PG as possible. I remember just tears just screaming down my face, begging and pleading with God, let this be the one that kills me, because I do not want to do this anymore. Just, just totally broken, totally trapped by this drug, and just pleading with God. And I overdosed like 8 times in 2 weeks, twice in one night, once at the hospital, like in the bathroom of the ER. It just was not happening. And then, fortunately for me, I had suffered enough that I was willing to make a change. Did not care what it was. And also, fortunately for me, I had several warrants out in several different counties of the greater metropolitan Atlanta area. And I decided to go to like the most comfortable jail, voluntarily turned myself in, because I knew at that point they were going to give me 2 trays and a bag lunch every day. I would have a place to take a shower, which I hadn't showered in months at that time. There was going to be a TV. I was going to have a place to sleep. Like, that was the jailhouse setting was so inviting to me at that point, just because it had been so low and so rough for such a long time, to where I was willing to do whatever, as long as I knew that I wasn't going to get high anymore. I was willing. I didn't care if I was going to be a janitor at a prison for the rest of my life. I was just done being sick, and I was done being tired, and I was done being a slave. I was done, and that's what I did.
That's interesting because I hear you talk about it, and the drug really, it's taken over your life. It's very apparent that it's taken over your life, and that rules everything. But what was I mean, there probably isn't one key piece, but what was the piece that really took you? Because obviously you were happy to lose your life to it, right? Just end this now, and that wasn't working out for you. What were the pieces, if you had to guess, or put those in place? What were those pieces that got you to a place of, I'm not going to use anymore?
I think for me, and similar to, I mean, hundreds of thousands of others, I knew that no matter what, I had faith in only heroin. I didn't have faith in anything else. I didn't have faith in people. I didn't have faith in a power greater than myself. I had faith in drugs, and that I knew that if I could exchange currency for narcotics, that was going to change the way that I felt. And then obviously now looking back at it, I was running away from fear of abandonment, fear of inadequacy, and I have just a litany of stuff that was just, in the house that I grew up in. But I think for me, what really changed was I really couldn't tell you. I think it was just an accumulation of just misery for like 3.5 years at that point, to where, I mean, there was no resources for treatment, right? I didn't have health insurance. My mother didn't have the resources to pay for treatment. And so it was just a little bit of a different dynamic for me, but it turned out to be the exact dynamic that I needed. And my mom, to her credit, set a boundary very, very early on. She's a big fan of the tough love. Joseph, I will support you with your recovery. I'm not going to support you with your nonsense. I'm not going to support you with your addiction, but I will support you with your recovery. And so she, and I know that she had a really, really difficult time, because I'm her only son, and moms and boys, that is a very special bond. I witnessed it in my own house. And then also, throwing the Italian mix in it, like it's Italian boys and their mothers, like it's a totally different. And so, she struggled with it for a long time, but, she stuck to her guns, and she knew that this is what she had to do because she also deserved to have a life. Her life can't be controlled by her sick son. She deserves to be able to do things that she wants to do. And, when she saw that I had turned myself into jail, is when we really started communicating again. And she knew that I was serious, and she knew that, something's different, and, he's not just in jail just to be in jail. And she started to come around, and it took some time. And, now today, 6 years later, it's my mother and I, we have a fantastic relationship. Absolutely fantastic. She's close with both of my boys, both of her grandsons. And she has a great relationship with my wife, her daughter-in-law. And it's really cool. It took some time. We put some work in, but, we got there.
That's, and then I don't know that you can put, those moments, those pieces together as to what exactly makes those changes. But it always seems like there's a series of events that you just go, yeah, I'm done. I just have to be done. And it's pretty incredible. How did you fund your addiction while you were on the streets? Everybody, these, people that have addiction are really, really creative and talented people. So I'm just curious how you did it.
Sure. So it was several different things. I would panhandle outside of gas stations, always being relatively, I don't want to say relatively clean cut, but, I was able to, kind of talk to people and, present some sob story. I would definitely try to, find someone who looks like a mom or like a high school female teenager, and whether they would give me money just out of fear or give me money to get them to leave me alone. That was how I did it. I got a whole lot of FUs, more so than I actually got money, but I would do that. I stole Starbucks tip jars for a year. I cannot go to any Starbucks in Georgia at all, and that's okay. I would steal, copper wire. I would steal from anybody and everything, right? Just to either sell it or pawn it or trade it, whatever that I could do to take this item, turn it into money so that I could get high. It didn't matter. There was nothing that was off limits. I was always afraid to go into people's houses. I hated that. I say that doing that several times, going into people's houses during the middle of the day, knowing that no one's home. And I've had to make a ton of amends, a ton of financial amends, since getting into recovery. But I think just like every other drug addict, you figure out a way, one way or another.
And it's interesting because, as we live affluent lives, and we have an awful lot of affluency, right? We have lots of things, and even the poorest of the poor are pretty well off considering, how affluent America is. And, you go to a third world country and we're all affluent. I don't care how poor you are. And how resourceful, people can really be. I watch people that, make very little money and they can make ends meet, right? It's incredible to me how resourceful people can be. So thank you for sharing that part of your story. Now talk about a little bit what you're doing today and how you're helping people. And I know that, when you got sober, you were willing to do just about anything to support yourself and to make a living and, go back to kind of your grassroots. Talk about that journey and what you're doing today.
Sure. So, what I'm doing today is I'm the director of business development for Amatus Recovery Centers. We have 16 facilities across the eastern United States and Ohio. The ones here in Georgia are Atlanta Detox Center, Atlanta Center for Mental Health, and Georgia Addiction Treatment Center. So we offer full continuum substance abuse from detox all the way down to outpatient. And then Atlanta Center for Mental Health, which is really unique, is we offer primary mental health residential treatment in Georgia. And you probably know this as well as I do. Georgia ranks 48th out of 50 states in terms of mental health resources. We have a few crisis stabilization, 3 to 7 day hospital settings. But in terms of actually offering mental health, prolonged residential outpatient treatment, there's not a whole lot of them. And so we've kind of found that we've developed this almost level of care, if you will, to where we're not a hospital setting. We can work with individuals and their families for, 3 to 4 weeks. And we offer the full services from full clinical and full medical, and our facility is extremely comfortable. And the thing that really sets us apart is our staff. There's a lot of great programs in Georgia, and we work with a ton of them, but our staff is by far the best. It's the best. We have people whose stories like mine, we have people who have, stories, maybe different levels of bottoms, but that are fully licensed and are passionate and are a part of the organic recovery community, not just the professional side of it. We have a really, really unique team. So that's what I'm doing now. I was actually recruited by my former predecessor. His name is Troy Roundy. He and I were in the same sober living together 6 years ago, and we were just really, really good friends. He's still one of my best friends to this day, and he wanted to work in the field and make a difference, and he wanted to help others. And I had heard enough, horror stories of people losing their balance and going back out, to where I said, absolutely not. I support you. I'm not going to do that. I'm doing multifamily sales and doing just fine. And then he said, well, why don't you just come on in and come see it, right? Come see the place. Let me know what you think. The owners are in town, come meet with them. And I said, all right, bro, I trust you. I'm going to come down there. And the facility blew me away. And then specifically the owner, Mr. Mike Silberman, 16 years in recovery, grassroots, got it from nothing, sold me on it. I believe the vision. I believe what he's trying to do. And I ended up taking the job as a regional outreach coordinator, and through just, a bunch of luck and some success, and find myself in this, regional director of business development title, which it's really fancy, but it's essentially the same thing. It's your job is to answer the phone and help people, regardless of where they go, help people. And yeah, sometimes my job is very stressful. And most days it is really stressful, but there's those moments where, man, this is the best job on the planet. This is the best. You don't get any better than this. And it can be extremely fulfilling and extremely, just special and unique. It has those moments.
When you talked about the mental health aspect of recovery, and I think for years and years and years it's been overlooked on some level, and that we're starting to come into a place where we know that if we're not addressing people's mental health with their substance abuse, we're not doing them any favors, because there's those core drivers, right? There's those pieces under there that are driving that substance abuse. Talk about how mental health played into your recovery and what you saw there in your life and what you see with the people you work with.
Sure. So I think mental health really showed up for me, was just, a major depression. I went undiagnosed for the longest time, and that would make sense for me continuing to seek out substances just to try to cover it up, because drugs was the one thing that made me feel how I thought other people felt. That was the one thing. So being able to get healthy and get my brain healthy again, really, and then also working with some professionals and some trusted professionals and some licensed clinicians and some fantastic doctors, being able to to get to that level of stability, and then being able to build upon that, over the last several years of, continue to grow and progress, like as like a man in society. So that's probably like the biggest way. And what I've noticed the most of, and I think you hit it right on the money, like it is those core issues, and so our motto at Atlanta Center for Mental Health, and, it can be, there's a lot of people who might have substance history, and there's some people who have none whatsoever, but our clinical director, she believes that untreated mental illness is the fire, and substance use disorders, like that's the smoke, right? Now we have to clear the smoke before we can treat the fire a lot of the time, right? We got to get you to be abstinent from drugs long enough to where we can recognize the symptoms, make a proper diagnosis, and put you on that path, right? Well, we're going to go through, if medication is going to be utilized, great. Like we'll do a GeneSight test. We'll find out what metabolizes best for you. You keep these records forever. Continue to work with our duly boarded psychiatric nurse practitioners. Continue to work with your therapist and our clinical director. And, we're a 40-bed facility. So, it's small enough to where it can be as clinically intensive as it needs to be. But it's not too small to where it's, like you're seeing the same people every single day, right? So, we're not 100 and 120 bed facility to where, it's big groups. We want to keep them real small. We want to keep it as clinically intensive as possible. I want to make sure that if a client needs to see their therapist, is that you're going to have that opportunity to, no matter what. If you have questions about medications, there are professionals there. Director of nursing also is an associate licensed professional counselor. We have several nurses in recovery as well, several clinicians in recovery, group facilitators, kitchen staff, alumni coordinators, discharge coordinators. There is you're going to be amongst friends and amongst peers, no matter what your background is, no matter what the issues are that brought you to us. You're going to be around someone that can relate and identify in you that you can in them.
And I think that makes a big difference because, well, and I go back to my history of working at a substance or a residential substance abuse treatment facility, not having a substance abuse background. And I would hang with all of the clients because I'm like, I need to know where they come from. I need to understand their place, right? I gotta get into their world. And so I would really love hanging with them, and I'd go to the gym with them, and I would really try and figure out what are they thinking about and what's going on for them and what's really what's really happening. Because when they come in my office as a therapist, they weren't necessarily telling me the truth. It was, they would tell the staff the truth, and they would tell them, things were going on, but they wouldn't necessarily come and do that to the professionals. And so I just thought that was an interesting dynamic. And so having people there that can relate and call them out and know, hey, by the way, I know you're blowing smoke, right? Like we all know you're blowing smoke, and to be able to have those kind of conversations, I think is really important.
No, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And, I try to get to the facility at all facilities. I try to get there at least twice a week, and I want to meet with everybody. Whether it's somebody that I was working with on the front end, or they came in through one of my outreach reps, or they came in through, the contact center, whatever the case may be. I want to meet with everyone because chances are, regardless of your history, regardless of your age, regardless of your demographic, I just want to hear where you're at. I make sure they know, like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a clinician. I'm just some guy in recovery that works in recovery. And, typically in my experience, I found that, someone is going to be more apt to feel comfortable because I'm not diagnosing them and I'm not analyzing them. Like, we're just going to talk, and you can tell me, Joe, I love the facility, but I hate your haircut and I don't like your shoes. I'm like, that's okay. Like, that's fine. And, I want to just let them know that no matter what, like, you're not by yourself. There's a platoon of people here that can help you, and I'm one of those. This is my number. You call me with anything. If you need, a list of meetings, you call me. If you need to get connected with a sponsor, you call me. If you need to get connected with, an outpatient therapist or psychiatrist or a doctor, you call me, and I'll help you however you need, regardless if, you were a client of ours or an alumni, or you're just someone in the recovery community that just needs some help. You call me.
So important to have that like you talked about. We got a tribe, right? We got a place where we belong, and we can create that, and we have people here that will help create that for you. But you got to open up a little bit and allow it, right? So that's kind of hard. I'm curious about mental health. Mental health often requires, at least initially, some medication. And in the substance abuse arena, there's been a lot of stigma. I know we're getting better, but it's still there. I still hear it. You know, if you're on medication, you're not really sober. How do you address that? What do you see happening in that world, in that realm?
You know, I think my standpoint on it is, and it's the same thing whether it's, you know, someone suffering from substance use and they're on medication assisted treatment, or if it's someone who has a history of mental health disorders and mental health illnesses and they're utilizing medication. You know, I don't really pay too much attention to like someone's opinion that might be in a 12-step fellowship, or they might be from a different type of like organic recovery community. My thing is, you know, if this is improving your life and improving your quality of life, do that. Do that. Regardless of, you know, if this person has an opinion about it or that person has an opinion about it, look at the evidence, because their story is going to be different than yours and it's going to be different than mine. If this is helping you, continue to do it. Make sure that you're utilizing everything properly, and make sure that, you know, you're being accountable, and making sure that you're working with the appropriate personnel, appropriate prescribers and providers. But if this is helping you, that's recovery. That's it. That's what you need to do right there. And whether it's medication assisted treatment and it's a temporary fix, or a temporary security blanket, and then you transition off and you're totally abstinent space. If that's your story, great, do that. If you transition from like Suboxone to Sublocade, great, do that. If you're on Vivitrol for a year or 2 years or 5 years, great, do that. If you're getting better and you're recovering and your quality of life is improving, that's it. Do that. Regardless of what it looks like, regardless of what it is, if it's healthy and it's helping you, do that.
Which is so important. It's the message we have to send, is because I think they're having their peers and others, you know, are kind of looking at them going, oh, yeah, you probably aren't really sober, but, you know, you'll get there. And that, you know, you're already fighting with self-esteem and worth and value. And so it makes it really tough. So, you know, having people around you and keeping people around you that are where you want to be, right? Who are in recovery and who are successful in recovery, and knowing that they're using medication too. And some of them are so happy to be on that medication and have, you know, in quotation marks, that normalcy that comes with that, right? Because it can shift. And I love also, you talked a little bit about using genetic testing to try and make sure that you can hone in on what's best for people. Can you touch on that just for a minute?
Sure. So at Atlanta Detox Center, and for all Amatus facilities, we have a specific contract with GeneSight. It was something that our director of nursing brought on to us, and it's wonderful. So it's a very quick mouth swab. We'll send it off to GeneSight, and then in about 48 to 72 hours, they'll come back and they'll break it down to which psychotropic medications metabolize best for that individual. So you'll have 3 antidepressants. One will be 25%, one will be 35%, but then one will be 90%. Great. We have this information. We're going to share it with the client. That's their records. You keep it forever. And then we're going to say, you know, this is what we recommend is that we're going to start you on. And that way we can start them on an appropriate medication. And that way, if we need to tweak it, either go up a little bit or go down a little bit to find like that nice little combination, then we can do that. But I mean, if we're just, a lot of times, you know, I see this outpatient therapist. They gave me Zoloft. They have a lot of success with Zoloft, and it turns out Zoloft might not be the best one for them. That's great, you know, and we'll be able to take that information, so that way we can kind of get them started, because you know as well as I do, psychotropic meds, they take like 4 to 6 weeks to really start building some chemistry. So those first couple weeks are so vital and so important, you know, and we have the staff in place to where, you know, we can make sure that they're being monitored and that they're safe, and, you know, take all the feedback that you possibly can. I always tell every client and all their families, ask the questions. If you have questions, what is this? What does it do? What are the side effects? Ask the questions, you know, because my staff can answer it. But if you don't ask, like, they don't know. And so just making sure that there's that open dialogue and that everyone feels comfortable and they're on the same page. And so we do, like, we'll utilize medications for sure.
And so important because, like you said, there's a lot of medications out there and the doctors are picking the ones that seem to work the most often for the most people. But that, that can take months, and sometimes it can have a negative approach, a negative effect on that person. And that turns them off really quick to trying something else because it was horrible, and they already feel horrible and now they feel worse. And so it creates this trauma in and of itself. So I love that you guys are, utilizing the technology that's out there to try and, improve the process, because it's a tough process to detox and then try and, get onto a medication that maybe will work and maybe won't. So that's good news too. It's a big deal. I love the technology and the science that starts to really help us be so much better at what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
Joe, it's been super great to talk with you today. It's been fun to hear your story, or at least was a brief portion of your story. And it's always exciting to see people, be in their recovery and have families, and how that changes the dynamics of the rest of their lives. So super grateful that you're willing to share that information and share that message of hope with all the listeners, and, take some time out of your busy schedule saving people.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. It was great to chat with you, and if there's anything that I can ever do to be of service, you give me a call.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks, Joe.